This was the price of freedom. Endless sacrifice, endless sorrow, and endless courage. The galaxy began to realize that humanity was different from any species that had come before. They were not stronger in body, not greater in technology, not superior in numbers. What made them unstoppable was their willingness to pay the price that others feared to pay. And so, battle by battle, grave by grave, humanity pushed forward. The stars were littered with loss, but also with hope. For even in the darkest night, the fire of freedom burned, and humanity would never let it die. The galaxy had always believed its empires were eternal. Their thrones were built on fear, their crowns forged from centuries of conquest. But humanity had proven that even the strongest walls could break, and even the oldest kings could fall. One by one, the mighty empires began to collapse. The first to fall was the Empire of Scales, a kingdom that ruled thousands of systems with claws of iron. Their fleets were vast, their armies endless, and their rulers proud. For generations they had mocked humanity as fragile and weak. But when the human fleets came, they came with fury. Striking from three sides at once, human ships swarmed across their borders. They hit supply lines, destroyed command stations, and tore apart the Empire's heart. Battles raged in the skies of burning worlds where human pilots fought with a desperation the enemy could not match. At last, the Empire of Scales collapsed, its throne world consumed in fire. Its rulers fled into the void, their pride turned into ash. The second to fall was the Dominion of Chains, famous for enslaving entire species. They believed no rebellion could touch them, for their capital was a fortress guarded by endless legions. But humanity had learned to fight in shadows. They slipped past defenses, broke open the slave camps, and turned the oppressed into allies. Armies once loyal to the Dominion rose against their masters, fighting side by side with human soldiers. The great fortress fell not from outside but from within, and so another throne crumbled. The galaxy watched in disbelief. These empires had ruled for ages, untouchable, unshaken, yet now they fell before a species once thought too small to matter. The alien kings began to tremble on their thrones, for they realized the truth. Humanity would not stop. But the war was not without pain. Every victory came with cost. Human fleets carried scars. Worlds lay in ruins. Soldiers were buried under strange skies. Yet the fire of humanity only burned brighter. On the front lines, human soldiers carried banners painted not with symbols of conquest, but with the words, "We are free, or we die." Their enemies could not understand it. They could not understand why humanity fought with such relentless will, why they risked everything, why they smiled even in the face of death. But the answer was simple. Humanity fought not for thrones, not for crowns, not for power, but for freedom. And with every throne they toppled, more joined their cause. Species that had once bowed in silence now rose in open rebellion. Worlds that had once obeyed the empires now cheered for the humans who fought for them. What began as humanity's fight was now the galaxy's uprising. The alien rulers tried to unite, forming alliances of desperation. But it was too late. Humanity was already everywhere. In every system, in every shadow, in every battlefield, they struck. No wall could hold them. No crown could stop them. At last, the greatest of the thrones fell, the throne of fire, a kingdom so ancient that many believed it would last forever. Its ruler commanded fleets larger than stars, weapons capable of burning entire worlds. Yet even this power could not stop the storm. Humanity tore through their fleets, broke their chains of command, and marched upon the throne world itself. When the final palace burned, the galaxy fell silent. The age of the old empires was over. For the first time, humanity stood tall, not as slaves, not as tools, not as prey, but as victors. The thrones that once ruled the stars lay broken. The crowns that once gleamed with pride were scattered. The kings who once laughed at earth were gone, their voices drowned by the roar of humanity's victory. And across the galaxy, a single truth was now clear. No kingdom was beyond their reach. The galaxy was silent. For the first time in countless centuries, no alien king ruled over humanity. No empire's fleets patrolled human space. No throne cast its shadow across the stars. Humanity had fought, bled, and sacrificed more than any species had ever known, and now the cost had been paid. But victory was not simple joy. Everywhere humans looked, they saw reminders of the price they had paid. Cities lay in ruins. Ships that had once carried brave crews floated cold and empty in space. Names were written in memory, in whispers, in tears. Mothers grieved sons, fathers mourned daughters, friends clutched each other in quiet sorrow. Freedom had been bought with blood, and the galaxy would never forget the sacrifices. Yet, even amid the grief, there was hope. Humanity had survived. Humanity had risen. They were no longer weak, no longer a species to be mocked or dismissed. The fires they had lit in the darkness had burned down thrones, toppled empires, and ignited the courage of countless other worlds. Across the stars, liberated colonies cheered. Enslaved species stood beside humans, proud and free. The galaxy's oppressed looked upon humanity and whispered words that had never been spoken before. We are not alone. On Earth, survivors walked through the ruined cities and looked up at the sky. It was the same sky they had always known, but now it seemed larger, brighter, and full of promise. Children ran through broken streets, laughing despite the scars of war. Elders spoke of the past with pride, telling stories of battles, sacrifices, and courage that would live forever. The leaders of humanity did not wear crowns. They did not demand obedience. They remembered every life lost, every world destroyed, and every tear shed along the way. And in remembering, they taught the galaxy something that no throne or empire had ever understood. Power is not in fear. Power is in hope. Power is in the courage to fight for what is right, even when the odds are impossible. In the void between stars, human fleets sailed not as conquerors, but as guardians. They protected the weak, defended the free, and reminded every world that humanity had returned, not to rule, but to ensure that no chains would ever fall upon anyone again. And in that moment, the truth echoed through the galaxy. Humanity had rewritten the rules of the stars. No empire could last forever. No king could claim eternity. And no species, however small or underestimated, should ever be ignored. Humanity had proven it. The survivors gathered on a hill overlooking the oceans of Earth, watching the sun rise for the first time without fear. A young soldier, his uniform torn and scorched from battle, looked at the horizon and smiled through tears. "We did it," he whispered. "We are free." An elder beside him nodded, holding the hands of grandchildren who had never known the old world before the war. "Yes," she said. "We fought, we survived, and we will never forget. Humanity is more than Earth. Humanity is the spark that will light the galaxy forever." And across the silent stars, where once there had been empires and kings, there now stood a promise. When humanity fought back, no kingdom was beyond reach. No throne was untouchable. No power could stand against the will of those who refused to kneel. The galaxy would never mock Earth again. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer with new life, as if even they recognized the triumph of a species that refused to surrender. And in the hearts of humanity, one truth burned brighter than any weapon or throne: freedom is eternal. And so are we. The story of Earth, once small and forgotten, had become the story of the galaxy itself. Humanity had risen, humanity had fought, and humanity would never be underestimated again. Word spread faster than the empires could silence it. On distant colonies, workers whispered about the ship that had dared to rebel. On enslaved worlds, children whispered the name as if it were a prayer. Defiance. Soon others followed. A farmer on a desert world traded his plow for a rifle. A group of captured soldiers escaped their alien masters and returned to fight with stolen weapons. Even children, once too afraid to dream, began drawing pictures of ships flying free across the stars. The spark was spreading. The empires tried to crush it before it grew. They sent patrol fleets to hunt down defiance. They executed rebels in public to scare others. They punished entire colonies for the actions of a few. But nothing worked. The harder they tried to silence humanity, the louder the defiance became. Because now humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other. On one moon, a small group of humans built secret radios out of scrap, sending messages of resistance across the stars. On Earth, hidden in ruined cities, survivors carved maps on walls, showing where alien fleets were weakest. In the asteroid belt, smugglers risked everything to carry weapons and supplies to those who dared to rebel. Everywhere, the message was the same: fight, resist, do not kneel. The galaxy began to whisper again, not in laughter this time, but in fear. The rulers who had once mocked humanity as weak now tightened their grip on their thrones. They could sense it, though they would never admit it. Something unstoppable was rising. And what terrified them most was not the stolen ship or the scattered victories. It was the unity. For the first time in human history, every voice spoke as one. People who had once been divided by nations, language, and belief were now bound together by one cause: freedom. The spark of defiance was no longer just a single ship. It was no longer just a rumor in the dark. It had become a fire spreading across the stars, one that no empire could fully control. And with every battle, with every whisper of rebellion, that fire grew brighter. The galaxy had ruled humanity with fear, but fear was beginning to change sides. The kings in their golden palaces now looked to the stars with unease, wondering how long their crowns would last. Because if one stolen ship could spread hope, what would happen when all of humanity rose together? The answer was coming. And when it came, no kingdom would be beyond reach. The empires could no longer ignore humanity. What began as whispers in the shadows was now echoing across the stars. The rebellion had grown into a storm. The rulers who once mocked humanity now sat in fear upon their thrones, watching reports of uprisings, raids, and battles they could not control. They tried to strike back with overwhelming force. Massive fleets were sent into human space filled with warships larger than cities. They unleashed machines built to terrify, weapons forged to break entire worlds. To the alien kings, it was simple. Humanity would either be crushed completely or vanish into history. But humanity had learned too much. Every colony, every ruined city, every secret base had become a battlefield. On frozen worlds, humans built hidden fortresses under the ice, waiting for the moment to strike. In burning deserts, they turned sand and rock into weapons, drawing enemy armies into traps where entire divisions vanished overnight. In the asteroid belts, humans moved like ghosts, striking supply lines, stealing fuel, and disappearing into the void. The empires expected humans to fight with honor and order. Instead, they fought like hunters. They adapted, changed tactics, and used every weakness of their enemy against them. Every loss taught them something new, and every victory fueled the fire of resistance. The galaxy had never seen war like this. A mighty empire once thought itself untouchable because of its distance. Its capital world lay far beyond the reach of most species, surrounded by endless fleets and defended by walls of fire. But distance meant nothing to humans now. They traveled through hidden paths, used stolen maps, and followed trails the empires thought were secret. And then, in one night, the humans struck. They came with ships painted black, engines burning bright with rage. They slipped past the defenses, broke through the walls of fire, and fell upon the capital world with fury. Palaces burned, statues crumbled, and the rulers who once laughed at humanity fled into the dark. The empire that had boasted of eternal power was reduced to ash. From that moment, the galaxy understood the truth. No kingdom was beyond humanity's reach. Another empire tried to hide behind its machines. They built endless armies of cold metal soldiers. They believed no human could stand against their perfection. But humans had always fought against impossible odds. They used cunning, traps, and sabotage. They turned the machines against their masters, rewiring them, teaching them rebellion too. Soon, the empire of machines was drowned in its own creation, while human banners rose above the ruins, and still, the rebellion spread, everywhere. Enslaved species who had once looked at humans with pity now saw them as hope. Some joined them, standing beside humanity in battle. Others watched in awe, whispering that the humans were something the galaxy had never seen before. Unbreakable, unstoppable, untouchable. The alien kings called them monsters, rebels, and destroyers. But to the enslaved and the broken, humans were liberators. To those who lived under fear, humans were the light of freedom. The fire of defiance became a storm of vengeance. Human fleets now roamed every corner of the galaxy. No throne was too far, no empire too strong, no wall too high. When humans set their eyes on a kingdom, that kingdom would fall. And yet, even as victories piled high, humanity carried the weight of sorrow. Every battle had its cost. Ships full of soldiers never returned. Families were torn apart. Names were written in blood across the stars. But still they fought on. Because they understood something the empires never would. Freedom was worth every sacrifice. The galaxy watched as history was rewritten. Once mocked as fragile, humanity was now the storm that no empire could resist. And with each throne they toppled, humanity sent a message that echoed louder with every victory. No kingdom is beyond our reach. Victory was never free. Every time humanity struck, every time they broke a throne or shattered a fleet, the cost was paid in blood. The empires had ruled for ages, and they did not fall easily. Humanity's path to freedom was carved with sacrifice. On the frozen moons where humans had built their hidden fortresses, defenders often fought until the last breath, holding the line so others could escape. Entire colonies turned themselves into battlegrounds, refusing to bow even when destruction was certain. Families were separated. Children grew up not under the warmth of peace but under the shadow of war. Every human carried a story of loss. A brother left behind in the mines, a sister who never returned from a raid, a parent who vanished on the battlefield. Names were remembered not in silence but in whispers of honor. They gave their lives, people said, so we could still fight. The fire of rebellion burned bright, but it was fed by sorrow. Even the crews of victorious ships often returned with fewer voices than before. The ship Defiance, the first spark of rebellion, had lost many of its original fighters. Each empty chair in the mess hall, each bunk left cold was a reminder of the price being paid. Yet the survivors carried on, because to stop would mean those sacrifices were wasted. Humanity understood something the empires never could. Freedom was not cheap. It was not given. It was earned, drop by drop, life by life, sacrifice by sacrifice. The alien kings had armies that fought for pay, for command, for control. But humanity fought for something deeper, for a tomorrow without chains. On one captured world, human soldiers freed an alien species that had long been enslaved. These people, small and timid, looked at their liberators with wide, fearful eyes. "Why do you fight?" one of them asked a human captain. The captain's armor was scorched and his face was marked with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. "Because no child," he said softly, "should grow up in chains. Not ours, not yours, not anyone's." That moment spread like wildfire. It was no longer just humanity's rebellion. Other oppressed species began to rise, inspired by the stubborn fire of Earth. They saw that humanity fought not only for themselves, but for the galaxy itself. The war was becoming something greater than revenge. It was becoming a movement of freedom. But even so, the burden remained heavy. Every victory carried sorrow with it. The galaxy might see banners waving and thrones toppling, but behind every cheer were graves. Behind every triumph was grief, and yet strangely the grief gave humanity strength. For every soldier who fell, another rose to take their place. For every ship destroyed, another was built with twice the determination. For every colony lost, another stood stronger. The pain united them. It reminded them why they fought. The empires could not understand this. To them, loss meant weakness. To humans, loss meant resolve. A mother who lost her son on a battlefield picked up his rifle and joined the fight. A child who saw his home burned by alien fire swore to one day build ships that would carry the war to enemy stars. A miner, once a slave, fought until his last breath so that others could escape. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, worlds, and civilizations. Among those countless lights, Earth had always been seen as something small and unimportant. To the great alien kingdoms, humanity was just another primitive race. Fragile, divided, too busy fighting among themselves to ever become a real power. From the high thrones of alien rulers, humanity looked like ants, busy, noisy, but ultimately weak. The empires laughed at the idea of humans ever standing beside them as equals. For centuries, they believed Earth would remain nothing more than a distant world, destined to be ruled or ignored. But they did not understand the truth. The first empire came in arrogance. They arrived not with open hands, but with chains. Their fleets appeared in Earth's skies like shadows blotting out the sun. They demanded obedience, demanded tribute, demanded that humanity kneel. When humanity resisted, the empire answered with fire. Cities burned, skies filled with falling ash. The oceans turned red with the memory of war. The rulers thought it would end there, that humans would break, bow, and become slaves like so many others before them. Yet, even as the smoke rose, something deeper began to awaken within humanity. The people of Earth had suffered through wars, disasters, and centuries of struggle long before any alien ships ever came. They had known hunger, pain, and loss. They had endured storms that wiped out homes, diseases that stole loved ones, and wars that tore nations apart. But in all of that darkness, humanity had learned something vital: how to endure, how to rise again, how to fight even when defeat seemed certain. The empires could burn cities, but they could not burn that spirit. In the ruins of fallen towers, survivors held each other close and whispered words of defiance. In the broken fields, farmers raised their eyes to the stars with quiet fury. Even in chains, humanity carried something the aliens had never expected: the will to never kneel. But for a time, Earth was silent. Too many had died. Too many had been taken away. The empires spread across human colonies, placing rulers in every world, every settlement. They turned the proud species of Earth into workers for their mines, soldiers for their wars, and servants for their palaces. Humanity seemed crushed beneath the weight of countless alien thrones. And yet, silence is not the same as surrender. In the quiet, something was growing. A spark, a memory. People began to recall the stories of old. The stories of warriors who stood against impossible odds. Of revolutions that threw down tyrants. Of mothers and fathers who gave everything so their children might see a brighter day. These were not just legends. They were truths written deep into the human soul. The galaxy had seen Earth as weak because it was small. But what the galaxy had not seen was how fiercely small things could fight when cornered. The storm was coming. When the first empire struck, they believed they had broken humanity forever. But in their arrogance, they had made a mistake. By pushing too hard, by taking too much, they had awoken something that had been sleeping. They had lit the fire of unity. For the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer divided by nations or borders. They were bound together by a shared pain, a shared fury, and a shared promise. The promise was simple: we will not remain in chains. No matter how strong the alien kingdoms appeared, no matter how many fleets filled their skies, no matter how many thrones tried to rule the stars, humanity would rise. They would fight back, and when they did, no kingdom would be beyond their reach. The galaxy did not know it yet. The rulers on their golden thrones did not see it. The vast armies with their shining banners did not believe it. But deep inside the silence of Earth, a storm was already building. The storm of humanity. The alien empires spread like storms across human space. They came not as friends, but as masters, wrapping heavy chains around every corner of humanity's future. Each empire had its own way of ruling, its own cruelty. One empire demanded endless labor. They forced humans into the mines of distant asteroids, making them dig until their hands bled and their lungs filled with dust. Entire families disappeared into tunnels where the sun never shone. Another empire demanded soldiers. They seized the strongest among the humans, trained them like animals, and threw them into wars that were not their own. Young men and women who once dreamed of building homes or raising children were sent to die on alien battlefields. And then there were empires that fed on fear. They built towers of fire in every captured city and forced humanity to bow beneath them. Every scream, every tear, was used as fuel to show who was in control. To the galaxy, humanity had become nothing more than a broken tool, a race bent beneath the weight of countless masters. But the empires made one mistake. They believed chains could break the human spirit. Even in the darkest places, whispers began to rise. In the cold silence of asteroid mines, humans told each other old stories while working under the watch of alien guards. They spoke of warriors who never surrendered. They spoke of revolutions where the weak rose up and threw down kings. In the hidden corners of the slave camps, mothers told their children, "Remember who you are. You are not theirs. You are ours. You are human." Hope was fragile, like a candle burning in the wind, but it refused to die. On ruined Earth, survivors carved secret marks into walls and stones, signs of resistance that only humans could understand. On far colonies where the empires ruled with iron claws, workers risked everything just to pass a message: we are not alone. Even across the stars, a single word spread in whispers and in silence, a word that carried fire with it: resistance. The alien kings did not hear it at first. They were too busy celebrating their victories, too blind in their arrogance. To them, humanity was already broken, scattered, and defeated. But what they did not know was that every beating, every chain, every injustice only pushed humans closer together. Humanity had always fought among itself. dividing by borders, nations, and beliefs. The empires thought this was weakness, but they did not see how quickly humans could set aside those divisions when facing an enemy greater than all of them combined. For the first time, the people of Earth and the colonies were united not by choice but by pain, not by pride but by survival. And in that unity, a seed of rebellion was growing. A miner in the asteroid field shared his stolen food with another, whispering, "One day we'll fight back." A soldier, taken by force and trained in alien wars, secretly marked his weapon with Earth's symbol, promising himself he would one day turn it against his masters. A mother in a slave camp taught her child the names of old heroes, saying, "Remember them because one day you must be like them." The empires thought they had silenced humanity, but silence is not the same as surrender. The galaxy had seen humanity's chains, but it had not yet seen the fire hidden within those chains. The people of Earth remembered who they were. They remembered the blood that ran through their veins, the stubborn will that had carried them through centuries of storms. And in that remembering, fear began to shift. Not the fear of humans toward their rulers, but the first quiet tremor of fear in the empires themselves. Because deep inside the shadows they began to sense it. Something was stirring. The whispers were becoming louder. The spark was growing into a flame, and when the flame rose high enough, when the fire finally broke free, no chain in the galaxy would be strong enough to hold it. Humanity would not remain tools forever. The empires had taken much, but they had also given something back without meaning to. They had given humanity unity. They had given humanity purpose. And that purpose was simple. One day we will rise. It began with a single act, a single moment when chains broke and fear turned into fire. On a distant mining outpost far from Earth, a group of human workers decided they had suffered enough. Every day they dug for rare minerals while alien guards watched them with cold eyes. Every day they breathed dust, every day they bled. And every night they dreamed of freedom. One night, under the silent stars, they made their choice. They overpowered the guards with tools meant for mining, not fighting. With courage born of desperation, they stormed the docking bay and seized a small warship that belonged to their masters. Many died in the struggle, but the survivors lit the ship's engines and flew into the void. That ship was given a name, Defiance. It was old, scarred, and stolen. But to the humans who now commanded it, the ship was more than metal. It was a symbol. It was proof that the empires were not untouchable. Proof that humans could fight back. Defiance struck quickly. Its crew freed prisoners from transport ships, raided supply lines, and spread hope wherever they went. Each victory was small, yet each one was powerful. For the first time, the chains of fear began to loosen.